show you that in just a second. We're fortunate, in the way of background, my sister owns a home in Maine, and they're not living in it full time, so they let us come up and spend a week in June. So my wife, who, by the way, I don't think I told you, Marty, we celebrated our 50th 2 weeks ago. So working on our next 50. So my wife and daughter, who's an elementary school teacher, we go up to Maine for a week, and they go shopping and touring, and I paint. At the end of the day, we gather for wine and lobster. I mean, is that a rough life or what? Well, that's what my hat on. You're not recognizing me with my hat. It looks better with my hat, but it makes it look like I've got hair. So anyway, this is the place that I painted. It's outside of Kennebunkport. It's Mel Staben actually introduced me to the place. And this gives you a flavor of what it looks like, and I'll pass these around. And it's all these little buildings up on stilts. And this is actually the one that I'm going to paint. And I have a couple of that. So Pam's going to pass these around in just a minute. So here's my plein air painting. And actually, I was fairly happy with this, although it's got some things that bother me. But anyway, what I like to do then is take this, and I study it for a while, and I decide what I like and what I don't like about it. And then I make a drawing the size of my watercolor paper. And so I think you can see here, I've added me. That's me painting a watercolor on the side of the boat. And the trees were a little anemic, you'll see in the photographs, so I gave them some magic grow. So I'm going to put bigger trees in. And I've made a bunch of other things, which I'll show you as I go along. I normally would not put the magic marker on there, the Sharpie. I did that so you could see it better. I don't think you'd see the pencil drawing.
Oh,
but
you usually just pencil? Just
pencil, and I erase and I mark it up, and I tear the paper a few times, and I just tape it back together. And so it's a pretty rough thing, but I trace it then. I have a light table, and I put this on my light table, and I trace my drawing over the top of that. So this is what I'm going to take a stab at. And I'll show you, as we go along, a few of the... I'll show you one more thing about it. When I did this, by the way, I spotted some errors still continually, and I circled them in orange here. You'll notice I have a bad tangent here, and I had some... Oh, I know what I did here. This one's pretty funny, actually. I had a post there that was an extension of my leg. It looked like my leg was 12 feet long. Fortunately, I picked that one up. But you can see the original post I had. Look at that. It was, so it's and then when I get to the paper, by the way, I still make changes on it as I'm going. But once I get to this stage, I've given up. Now, I'm going to wet the back of my paper. While I'm doing that, I'll show you my palette.
When you traced it, did you use carbon tape?
I have a light table.
Oh.
This is 140-pound Winsor Newton paper, and the light will go through it from... Light goes through this...
Oh, and then you can just draw on top of it. Got it.
Yeah, I lay this on top, and I have a small light table. I have to keep moving it around, but it works. And when I paint like this, by the way, I don't use any references when I'm painting. I have the drawing I made, I have the plein air painting I did, and I have photographs, but I don't look at anything. I don't want to look at anything. I want to paint like I was a kid again. And you know, you did coloring books and crayons, right? And you didn't have a model, so that's the way that I like to paint. Here's my coloring book drawing, and here is my crayons over here. And I'm going to paint the way I feel like painting. And I don't really care what local color is, by the way. If I'm doing a commission for somebody, and maybe I'll have to pay attention to that. But in general, it doesn't really make any difference to me. Look, even this building, which is gray, and I'll probably paint it gray today, but the current owner or the next owner could paint it red. So why couldn't I paint it red? Well, anyway, I'll pass this around. These are my colors, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera for just a minute. I'll leave my palette out here. Is that clear enough? You can see it all? I use, those are all American Journey cheap gel paints, and I paint primarily with primary colors, and I have 4 of each. That's been sort of the way I got started. And I cheat a little bit, so the color in the lower left-hand corner is is Halloween orange, and I substituted that for one of my yellows. And I have gamboge. Those two colors I really like, and I stick with those. There's my two yellows. The other two yellows I rotate, and right now I have Joe's yellow and sour lemon. And sour lemon, I'm at the end of the tube of sour. I don't waste any paints. I'm at the end of the tube, and I'm going to replace it with a Rillian. I've already ordered my Rillian. So I do change those around. My reds are alizarin. And I have all these down on this sheet of paper, by the way. We'll pass it around. Pam, you want to pass those around? I can start those now. Thank you. So I have alizarin crimson, permanent rose. Then I have red hot mama, which is sort of a cad red type of color. And a brand new one for me called Coral. I've only had it for 2 weeks. That's my fourth red, and I haven't used it very much. And it's kind of similar to the others, so I'm not, that may not survive my test. But anyway, I'm using a new one. Then for blues, I have cobalt manganese. I have an empty slot, which is for phthalo blue, which is my favorite blue, but when I teach painting, and I don't like the students to use phthalo blue, it's a nasty blue, but so I take it out of my palette when I'm teaching. But other than that, I leave it in. I like it. Then I have ultramarine, and Prussian is my last blue, and that's the end of my Prussian. I'm not going to use that anymore. So I'll switch blues.
Tom, why are you wetting the back?
Oh, God, I was afraid you were going to ask me that.
There's a big
But let me finish my palette, and I'll tell you what. Then I'll give you a chance to make up a reason why I'm doing this, okay? On the right-hand side, those are my miscellaneous colors. Right now, I have Janet's Violet Rose, which is slightly opaque, so I don't think I'll continue. I have quinacridone gold and raw sienna. Both are very similar. And I like the raw sienna better, so once I have my tube of quinacridone gold is gone, I'm not going to use that anymore. And so I don't paint with any greens, browns, grays, yellow ochres, cad colors, or that. And actually, every painting that you've seen up here that I've done, if you look at these, the only one that's of any exception to this palette is the dark ones. I do use phthalo green in. I don't like phthalo green. It's a nasty color, but it does make nice darks. And if you mix it with the dark blues and alizarin crimson, you get some pretty nice dark colors.
You're missing a spot.
I'm missing it. Thank you.
this way.
I see it. So why am I doing this? Well, first of all, I'm a little nervous, so I'm working out the butterflies, okay?
That's good.
You can pick any. I'll give you 3 or 4 reasons. You can pick the one you like the best. I notice when people play golf, they take 27 practice swings before they hit the darn ball. So I'm taking 27 strokes to get warmed up. But I'm actually going to paint wet and wet, so I'm hoping this might keep the water in the paper a little longer. And so I like to save my edges. And so one way to do that is to, I like to wet a lot of the front of the paper, but it takes a long time to dry, so I hope the front isn't too wet. It's a little wet, but if it's randomly wet, I kind of like that because that means I'll have some random things that will happen. And I'm going to throw a little water. What was that? It's only 140 pounds. It's Winsor Newton paper. I don't use arches. It was a spell of arches where the paper stunk, literally. I mean, it had an odor like a locker room. So I gave up on arches. That's good. Okay. By the way, I do keep wet sponges in my palette. If you notice, those are soaking wet sponges. That's how I keep my paints nice and moist. And someone invariably asked me how you avoid mold, and I had an answer for that, and I realized it wasn't the right one because a friend of mine told me the secret is that it's the cad colors that get that mold, and I haven't used cad colors in years, so it was by chance that I eliminated mold. I paint with only transparent colors, so I don't use anything that's opaque. I hate yellow ochre, by the way, so just to give you an idea. You can't see the palette, right? But am I square roughly with the...
Roughly.
Well, you're going to know... by the way, I was going to paint this this would be a great subject, yellow. And I was thinking of doing that, but I noticed your demo that Teresa did last time was in April was pretty heavy on the yellow, so I decided I'm going to paint patriotic here. So I'm going to paint red, just a red, white, and blue sky. How's that? Now, the one thing that I'm going to do that is different than the norm in watercolor. That's just cobalt blue. I'm going to have trees up and through there, so but most people paint watercolor in layers. You build up layer and layer and layer, and I don't. I try to do one layer, one and done. It's like I like the golf analogies. It's like a par 3 hole, and I'm trying to hit a hole in one. If I have to come back to glaze, I will. But I'm going to try to get everything on this in one layer of paint, no glazing at all. Which is, I realize this is not the norm, but I find if I paint like that, I get cleaner, fresher, brighter, nicer colors, and it fits my personality better. There was an article in the magazine, International Artist, that had some guy did this fabulous work with 20 washes. That's easily, my patience would not survive 20 washes. I couldn't possibly even do that. So I'm going to put some green trees. Now I have a tendency when I paint my trees to make them like that's pretty yellow. I have to be careful. I like to use lots of color. You probably didn't realize that, and so I tend to make my trees a little too bright. I'm going to put some red in here. I also like to, oh, that's too much. I also like to put red in my trees.
What size brush are you using?
This is a 14. It's just a synthetic brush.
Is it flat?
Is it what?
Is it flat or round?
No, it's a round brush, and it has bristles going sideways on it.
You did that.
It takes, you have to abuse a brush to make it do that, by the way. This takes years of practice to get those bristles to go sideways. And I have a friend, I was telling Pam earlier, that her bristles really go wicked sideways, and she paints with the side of her brush, and she gets all these wonderful effects. And so a few more years I'm going to have it. If I keep using this brush, it's going to be okay. So I did have a drawing down here, and this is the way I like to paint, nice and wet, and let the water run all over the place. The hard part about this is getting the one value right getting it right the first time. And I'm going to put maybe a couple of tree shapes in here. I also want to try to remember to leave some air holes, sky holes. I hope I remember to leave those. And when I look back and I see I have some bad shapes in here. So this is kind of a bad shape, and it's sort of a round. So I'm going to get rid of that shape. Oh, there's a nice rich dark. So I'm painting wet and wet, so it's still only one layer because it's only going to be. I'm just mixing on the paper now instead of in my palette. That's a little more red in there. That's where I get in trouble. I can't resist, and I love Halloween orange, and it's hard for me to not paint trees without putting Halloween orange in them. So makes them look like fall trees is the only problem. But I still like to. Now, actually, I can't see my drawing here anymore, but that's okay. I know I went off the paper here. This is quite a bit more than the. I don't want to spend too much time with these trees here. I want to see if I can't get these on because I leave an air hole in there. Keep changing color. And by the way, you can't see my palette, but I do stick my blue brush into my yellow paint. And I contaminate it. So I had a friend who suggested that I have two yellows. I have a clean yellow and a dirty yellow. So I tried that for a while and ended up with two dirty yellows. So I gave up on that. I said, well, that was a good idea for someone else, but not the way I paint. I can't fool around with worrying about where I'm sticking my brush. Okay, I can't resist. This Halloween orange here has got a big pumpkin in it that's screaming at me. I don't want it to be too bright, but I'm going to stick a little in. I'm going to just tone it down a little bit, just for, I don't know, just for interest, I guess, variety, for fun mostly. I'm having a ball, all right? This is great. Now I'm absolutely not paying any attention at all to my drawing up here, and it really doesn't matter. I don't really care what the drawing has. All I'm doing is just changing color as fast as I can. And I want to leave an air hole. I was going to put some trees in there. It's too much of the same color. So I just throw some blue into that. So you can see I use the side of the brush a lot. That's probably what, oh, that's too dark for the side. That's probably why the bristles are growing sideways. And a lot of my brushes, by the way, the paint comes off the handles, and so I've actually painted a couple in here. I put black paint on my handles to try to save them so they're not so rough. Okay, I'm going to sort of, that looks okay to me. I've got sort of an interesting white shape here. I might put a tree in here, and I'm going to put a, let me see if I can get, this is going to be a, I'm painting the tree blue, or green, or some color. Notice I'm not going to paint it, I'm not going to put a brown tree, or, I could put a gray tree in. So I'm just kind of looking to see if it looks okay to me, and it sort of does. You know, I told somebody the way you have to view painting, in my opinion, is I'm going to try to be a little more careful around painting around me here. The worst thing that's going to happen when you paint is you might ruin an otherwise perfectly good piece of watercolor paper. And of course, when you paint in a group like this, I could also make a complete fool of myself, but in that case, I left the car running in the parking lot. If I have to make a quick getaway. But I think I view it that way. There's one painting up here that's there's a painting of a white building that has shadows on it, and that's a plein air painting. It's the third one of that I did, though. I just couldn't get it. I wasn't happy with it. And I was darned if I was going to give up on that. So I'm painting a little carefully around this because this is my, I want this to be a center of interest, and I want it to be important. I don't want it to be a halo on it. I've already got my halo on, so I don't want a halo around my painting. Close in some of that hole there. I use quite a bit of pigment, and maybe it's one of the reasons why I use cheap Joes. Now, there is one thing that I'm doing here that I absolutely do not like to do, and I'm using, and this thing has draped cords on it for like a safety railing, and I did put mascoid on those, and I do not use mascoid as a rule. I don't like it. I like to paint around these. So I would generally paint around each one of these, which is the way I would prefer to do it, but I thought it was going to take me too long today, so I decided I would compromise and use the mascoid. And I hope I don't regret it, because the last time I used mascoid was in painting in 2005, so I used it, but seriously, I happen to know, I remember the painting. Just like I won't forget this one putting the mascoid in here. So I use it once every 8 years at the most. And of course it has a half-ounce supply of mascoid would be a 500-year supply for me. It only has a lifespan of about a year. So that's the other reason I don't like to use it. I have to keep buying that darn stuff. Now I definitely have a halo around me that I can see, but it's pretty. You maybe can't tell on the camera. This is all very wet in here. It's very wet, so.
Hey Tom, when you're painting for yourself, what do you find is the difference in usage between the phthalo blue and the ultramarine blue?
You're getting a lot less trouble with ultramarine blue. Phthalo blue has a way of it's very strong, it's very staining, it has a way of taking over a painting, I think. And so that's why I'd like the students not to use it. I just happen to like the strength of it. I really like paints that are staining. I don't really mind that at all. Several of mine are. I don't really care if they stain or not. I'm not going to be lifting a lot, and where I lift, you can lift stained colors as long as you don't, wait days to lift them. I'll do a little lifting in here, as a matter of fact. I'll show you. Even though let's see, I can't remember now. I used to know better what my staining colors were, but one of the changes I'm making on this thing, by the way, and I can't tell you why I made this change at all. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But the posts on the building, the actual building, are square, and I'm going to paint them round. And I can't tell you why I'm doing that. As a matter of fact, I thought about that. I said, why am I doing that? Not the slightest idea. So I want to get down to my water line here. Taking me a little longer to paint the trees here than I had hoped. But the biggest thing I was trying to do was just change color, so I had lots of vibrant color. I didn't really want to jump forward because I've got some forward greens here that I'll try to paint very light. So I'm trying to make these somewhat dark. I have some rocks down here, and I'd like to paint those wet too. So I showed you, I said I could lift the little thing. So this is very wet. You can lift with, sure you know this, you can lift with a paintbrush, just a dry brush. I was going to lift with a credit card. I forgot to get my credit card out. If you lift with a credit card, you need a $100,000 limit on your credit card. Because, you don't want you want $100,000 trees in there. That's enough of that. I don't want to fool around with this thing too much. Okay, so I've got some rocks over here. Before I do the rocks, I'm gonna, now they're okay, I can do that now. I will use, this is switch to, that's raw sienna. That's the first time I've used raw sienna. Now they may not look like rocks back there, and I don't actually much care right now if they do or they don't. Hopefully they're way back. So I'm going to have some blue rocks, and I'll have some other kinds of rocks. So this is an area where you could also use Misket if you wanted to paint around all these posts and not have to do this futzing around. But I like to paint like this, and I like to paint them fast, and I make mistakes. I'm not intentionally making mistakes, but you just make mistakes painting as fast as it is. And this is what the way I paint when I'm painting by myself. I paint fast so that I do make mistakes. So I don't want this to be perfect. I don't want this, even regardless of what I'm doing. You'll see, I don't want it to be pristine. I just as soon have it off. And when I paint these ropes, around these ropes, I invariably get, I miss some. Like there's a piece that I missed, by the way. I'll show you in a second here. I painted through one of my posts here. Okay, so this post here sort of died right here. So first of all, I can paint it darker later, but I'll just lift a little bit for right now. I'll come back, and that's not going to be a problem. Okay, so while I'm right down this close to the water, and I'd like to get a nice soft edge down here. Geez, I got a background up there as
How wet is the paper still?
most of the paper is pretty wet. I don't know if you can, I don't know exactly how to show you how wet it is. It's pretty wet.
Okay.
And the back should be pretty wet too. It's pretty wet. This is all very wet. I mean, you could certainly scrape that if I say if you had a credit card. I have little pieces of credit card that I cut off, but I don't happen to have one else that's handy.
Yes, plexiglass.
Yeah, I'm painting on plexiglass. I paint outside on that too. It's kind of heavy, but I like it.
Keeps the paper wet.
Keeps the paper wet. That's why I like it. And I've painted on plexiglass for a long time. And I keep getting lighter and lighter with my outside painting, plein air painting supplies. But when it comes to plexiglass, I haven't quite been willing to give that up yet. I think I will eventually, but I'm not quite there yet.
Does that prevent the paper from buckling?
Now the paper buckles when you get on uneven moisture content. That's really what causes buckling. And if you wet, what I would generally do is wet a lot of the paper, and my paper hardly ever buckles. As a matter of fact, if you look at most of the paintings I've got here, they're all flat. It doesn't really matter what, take any, there's a full sheet painting the same size, that's pretty flat.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything special to that. It's just, I sort of have, I get relatively uniform wetness. Now I don't, because I've got this part of the paper soaked and this part's dry, but I did wet the back.
Do you always wet the back?
I don't always do anything, by the way.
Maybe it's the paper that's so
So what kind of paper is this?
This is Winsor Newton paper.
Is it hot press, cold press?
Cold press, it's just the standard paper, probably the same type of paper that most of you are painting on. Except most people paint on arches. So I've got to get back to my blue here now. I've got to get a little bit of blue in the water anyway. And I think over here, I'm going to paint through these because these are dark over here. So this is one case where I normally wouldn't do this, but I think I'll be okay because I'm going to paint those dark, and it's a little easier to do this. And I could have used Misket, or Mascoid, whatever you call that stuff. I just don't like to use it. That's all. Now I didn't leave any white in my water, unfortunately, so I should have, but I didn't leave any. So let me just see if I can't. I'm painting around some rocks here, and I don't want my eye going to those rocks when I'm done. They're there. But I didn't want them to, let's see, one of these is out in front, this one. I think that's out in front. I'm not exactly sure anymore. I've kind of lost track of what I've got here. I've got all these posts going up and down. Doesn't really matter. So I think I've got the water okay. I'm about ready to do the most difficult part of the painting, so I'm stalling a little bit. Just the edge, yeah. That's too big a brush for that. I'll finish that while I'm here, while it's nice and wet, so I can get some nice, hopefully I'll get some nice bleeds down in the water. That looks close enough. Didn't mean to put that strong dark in there. So it's pretty wet, so it's pretty malleable. You're right. You can certainly play with it. So what I would generally do is I stick with these until I'm happy with what I've got there. I've kind of lost my rocks over here, but I think that's okay. I'm going to get some backgrounds there, but I'm probably painting a little faster than I would normally.
Are you still using that same brush?
Yeah, this is the sideways one. Okay, let me. I had some trees up there which I do want to put in. So let me just take a Let me go back to that. I kind of forgot these because I'd like to drag this down into my roof up in here. One thing I'm trying to avoid, by the way, and I'm sort of doing this intentionally, is getting any really strong colors near the edge of the paper. This may be a little too abrupt here, but I don't really want anything really important happening at the side of the paper. So I'm going to do this roof right now. It gives me a great chance to, I'll probably lose an edge there, and I'm going to do, this is a white piece of the building that's going off the edge here, so I'm going to try to, I'm just playing here now, by the way. I can't resist doing this. I don't have enough paint there. I'm trying to get that to bleed down into the white. It's going to look like a happy accident, except I'm trying to make it happen. It's easier if they happen accidentally. Come on, bleed, you son of a gun, bleed. Yeah, maybe it'll bleed. Okay. Okay, I want to get on to the real hard part of the painting here, which is the building. And the reason the building is hard is because it has multiple values, and they're really, when you try to get this in one layer like I'm doing, it's hard to get those values correct. So I'm going to do the white and shadow, which is the key. And white and shadow is about a 50% value, so it should be 50% from white to my dark. 50% value. And so I'll mix some gray up. And in order to get gray, I just mix the three primaries together, by the way. Any three primaries together with lots of blue will turn gray. And I'm trying to judge if that's a 50% value or not, because remember, it's going to dry later. And invariably, I'll put this on, it's too dark, and then I'll have it dry, and I say, oh, darn, it dried too light. I'm going to say that's okay, because I don't want to futz with it too much. So I'm going to come in and paint white in shadow. That looks really dark there, doesn't it? This is why this is tough, but that looks too dark to me. So I'm going to try to lighten it a little bit. All right, this is white and shadow going across here, across the window. Boy, that's still looking dark. Shucks. I'm going to put some red in that too, just to liven it up a little bit. It's a pretty dull color. So white and shadow. Hopefully this is white and shadow. It'll be a nice pot to stick some manganese blue. And this is this is really the tricky part for me to try to get this right, by the way. That's a shadow cast by the boat. I didn't finish my green in there, but that's okay. I got sidetracked. This is white and shadow here. Right now these seem a little bit disconnected. Hopefully they won't be in a brief while. Now the underside, this part of the roof, is reflected light, so that's lighter. That's a lighter value. It's white in shadow, but it's reflected shadow. And I'd like some nicer color in there. That's pretty dull, so throw some Halloween orange in. And I've got another one of these over here too. So this should be a lighter value. I'm trying to get my values right. So that should be a lighter value than white in shadow. And maybe a little of my, I got to find a use for this coral red I bought here, so. I've got white, oh, I forgot to paint one thing, shucks. White and shadow is on the, there's a little bit of a, lost my blue there. There's a what do you call those things? Flower boxes. And this is white and shadow coming down. This is the trim. I think that's enough. Fooling around with this. This whole window is in shadow, but the white. I'm not going to make that look like a window in a minute, I hope. I don't know if I've missed it all or not. Okay, now I want to paint the light side of the building. And that has to be lighter than white and shadow. So if you have a light, right, any color, including black in sunlight, is lighter than white and shadow. Got that? Right? Let me say black. Black in sunlight is a lighter value than white in shadow. Black in any color in sunlight is lighter than white in shadow. If you don't believe that, when you're driving home today, stop at a white building and take a look. You'll see that that in fact is the truth. I don't think you necessarily have to paint that, but I think technically to make it correct, that would be right. So this is the flat side of the building, and I just want it to be, going to add some color to this. I just want it to be lighter in value than my white and shadow, and if I can get it lighter, it will read fine. So this is just a sort of a neutral gray that I got mixing the three primaries together. But I don't want to leave it like that. I want to come in and that's a little too dark. I want to put some sparkle in it. And this is a case of where I'm just having pure fun. The building, it does have variable colors, if I recall, but it does, they won't be this bright. But that's okay. It's this is me with a coloring book now, and I can't resist all these. Got all these fabulous colors, and wow. So, and I want to show you too, if I don't forget, I'll try not to forget to, by the way, I could have put shutters on this building. If you look closely at the photograph, anyone has that, you notice I changed the windows. The photograph shows casement windows, which did not look to me like they would have been original to the building. So I put in these double hung windows, which I think are more technically correct for the age of the building. I could be wrong in that, but it seemed better to me. And you know what? No one is ever going to see this building and my painting together to know that I did that, except I told you. But other than that, no one's going to know that.
We don't know where it is.
You don't even know where it is. Not only that, but you know what? It's a really hard place to find. This place is obscure. Now, I have a problem here right now, just to point out to you, as I just spotted. I have blue on this side of the post, and I have yellow on that side of the post. So I don't like stopping the color on the post, so I've got to get the same color on both sides. So that takes care of that, I think. Oh, I like that blue up there. That's okay. Now, the other thing what you can do is, so I'm trying to paint variable colors, but light. And hope that my values hold. That's the key to this, to be sure that I get the, that's raw sienna. Oh, where's my orange? My Halloween orange. This pumpkin and this orange keeps crying out at me to put some in there. Not that bright. Holy mackerel, what happened here? Can't get it out of my brush. Come on, paint. That sort of doesn't happen to me with the Halloween orange. I'm definitely having, maybe the pumpkin is misleading me today here. That looks all right. Okay, where am I here? Oh boy, there's manganese blue. I do like that. I found Cheap Joe's cerulean blue was too close in color to cobalt. So I've been painting with manganese now for some time. It's transparent, so I like that. And I am sneaking in a little bit of every so often. This is that Janet's rose that I said was a little on the opaque side, but it's okay if you use it with water. Boy, oh boy, what the heck's going on here? Somehow the paint's sticking in my brush today here. Must be the New Jersey air. I did forget to paint these flowers here, by the way. And by the way, one thing I didn't tell you was that when I paint my greens, I generally paint them, all the greens on the paper at the same time. Well, I got the greens out on my palette, it's all green, so I would have done these foreground greens. The difficulty with that is then, if I did it at home, I'd let it dry before I came back. I can re-wet the paper, but I'd let it dry. And I didn't want to be working over it today, so that's why I didn't do it. But that's what I normally would do, is I'd paint all the greens on a painting at one time. I can see my mascoid on this now. I don't know if it shows up on the video or not, but see the paint's being resisted by the mascoid? Now, I got one more stretch of this to do here. One more little piece, and this is not an important piece up here, because this again, now my paper's got a little buckle in it there, so that's the moisture content is now varied up there. But I'm not going to let it faze me. It's still going to dry pretty flat. Okay, now I want to come in with, I hope I got them all. I want to come in with my darks now. This is a little hard too, but I need to be, this is my gauge here, right? My white and shadow. So now I'm going to paint the dark. So this definitely has to be darker. So too much water in my palette. When you paint with a lot of water like I do, you can't have a flood in your palette. My palette, by the way, still looks pretty messy. I just sopped up the water. So anyway, I'm going to try to make I'm going to mix a fresh gray, dark. Let me see how this looks. That's dark. Okay, it's going to dry lighter. I think I'll be okay with that. I'm going to go for it. Now, this is a shadow. I don't think there was any shadow in my... Oh, I'm hoping this will bleed a little bit, by the way. It is bleeding a little. This really should be a sharp edge, but I definitely prefer soft edges. So, even though it's in reality a hard edge, I like to make it a soft edge. I'm gonna come back right now while it's nice and wet, and I'd like to be really dark up in here. There's not much light up at the very top of this. And hopefully it won't bleed too much on me, but if it does, so be it. That's the way it goes. When you paint wet, you take your chances sometimes. So I'm getting a pretty good bleed here, but I'll probably leave that. You could fool with that if you wanted to. I tend to leave those. If that bothers you, just don't paint with as much water, that's all. One of the reasons why I like bleeds is because it's the only medium where you can get them. And so this is going to scream watercolor when we're done. I should tell you, we've been going to Florida now for the winters, and I went to a art festival, one of those outdoor art festivals in Florida. And there was a guy that, maybe some of you have seen this, I don't know his name, but he had these fantastically accurate, detailed paintings, and he had to put a sign on the wall that said, "These are paintings, not photographs." Now, technically, his ability was phenomenal. I mean, these things were, you couldn't tell. They were truly outstanding. I kind of wondered if his house had signs on his paintings to no guests that came in to tell this is a painting, not a photograph. I mean, to me that makes no sense at all, by the way. I want this painting to look like a painting when I'm done. And I want it to scream watercolor, and it will, I think. Particularly with me having all these bleeds on it. See how it's keep bleeding down? I generally just let that go and see what happens. I don't think I'll regret it. But you never know. If I do, I will have, as I said, ruined a otherwise perfectly good piece of watercolor paper. Now that's pretty colorful. I kind of like that. I like the orange I put in it, and I'd like to get a little more red in it maybe. I got rid of my nice dark there. I shouldn't have gone back to full with that. I've got this large area to do of, and I got to stay with this brush, I think. I got this large area now of dark over here. My bleed there never did happen on the, that I wanted to get on the roof. So I'll have to go back and paint that later. Up there. See that white, I think is taking, your eye is being taken off the paper by that piece of white I've got there, so. So you notice that the traditional way to paint this would have been to paint the entire building color and then go back over these shadows after it dries with a glaze layer. But you notice that I'm not doing that. I'm painting my dark on a white paper. And the reason I'm doing that is I want that dark to be dark, but I'd like it to be nice and transparent and fresh and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm doing it that way. So you could paint over it, it'd probably be okay. I choose to do it this more. See, that's a little lighter, more difficult way because I kind of like the look of it. I like the dark that still just wet on wet, so I'm not. I'm not going to put as much color over here because, at least I hope I'm not. It's. I don't want my eye going over to this side of the paper particularly.
Did you wet underneath that before you painted that section, or do you mean that it's wet on the back?
I didn't wet the paper on the front. I wet the whole back when I started. It's probably drying now. I've lost some of the moisture content. So this is relatively dry. I think that's why it's wrinkling a little bit. Now I have to hope that that this value, the shadow, will be dark enough. If it isn't, this is why I might have to go back in later. But I'm hoping I got it dark enough, and I never know if you do or not because it dries. Now the one thing which I didn't do, which I wish now in retrospect, let me see, this may be too dry. I do like to, yeah, I don't want to go back and fool with that. I'll do that later. I did forget, I normally would put some individual like shingles and maybe some lines in it while it was nice and wet, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. Okay, so, oh, I forgot a couple of shadows here. Not quite as dark, but I do. This is a, I'll paint this very wet, nice soft edges here. These are sort of made-up shadows. That's supposed to be a shadow of the boat and me, I guess. And there's also shadow. Now, technically, I don't know if these are exactly right, because I didn't see any of this when I was there. It was very overcast, and as a matter of fact, by the time I finished this painting, it was raining. So I didn't actually see this building in sunlight. So I'm making all of this up right now, just kind of winging it a little bit. And that's okay. But I did forget to paint my greens. I'll come back and get them later. So I'm going to do the windows now. I love to paint windows, by the way. Just they are the most fun. The way I paint windows, they're fun anyway. I just did a demo. I was telling Pam, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and I told her another story about that, but the guy did not like my windows. So somehow you have this preconceived notion about what a window should look like. And I wasn't meeting his preconceived notion. It's kind of like somewhere along the way you learn that sky is blue and grass is green and barns are red, right? sometimes where they are or not. I taught fourth graders. I had an artist in residence program for fourth graders. And when we rolled the windows down one day, and I asked them all to look out the window and tell me what color the sky was, and most of them said blue. And I looked out, and it was a very cloudy, overcast day. I said, geez, take another look. And then they finally came back with gray. They figured it out. I did the same thing with everything. When I finally got them to actually look at what they were, so then they got much better. But they had the preconceived idea of what the sky looked like without even looking at it. So I'm just putting a variety of colors in here, and because I've got this is a big rectangular, not very interesting shape, and it's got 2 layers of rectangle, and I've got 12 rectangular lights in there. I'm going to intentionally connect some of these windows. So I'm gonna right here. I'm gonna get rid of that. I don't know, mullion or whatever that thing is called on a window. I should know that. And I do that simply to try to make the painting more interesting, and I'm going to connect these up in here too. And you know, when you get all done, you're going to look at this, and I think everyone's going to realize this is a window. It's like, what else could it be? Right? It looks like a duck and quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it might be a duck. One of those kinds of things. So. Anyway, just varying the colors. I should put some green in this because obviously it's reflecting trees, so I can put some green in that. And green might be more realistic. Too much paint on my brush that's all shot here. But anyway, this is just how much fun can you have doing stuff like this, right? I mean, this is. That's one of the reasons why I don't like to look at a photograph, because you would never see this in a photograph, right? And the kiss of death for a window for me is anyone who paints windows in Payne's gray. Oh my God, that's a disaster. And maybe that's what the photograph shows, but at least reflect nature or do something. I just don't think windows are. In a painting, I just think they really look bad, Payne's gray. And I know people have a tendency to do that. I would try to encourage you to, if you have that habit, to break it. So I'm going to say that's enough for the windows. They look okay to me. And you can also, one thing you can do with the windows sometimes is, not blot them, but they look pretty good to me. I did miss a shadow line here, which I could put in now. There's probably one underneath this thing too. There's one down here. I forgot to get those in earlier. That's all right. While I'm doing this. Close enough. Okay, now I'll do these other windows pretty quickly. This one's behind a screen door, so these are much duller. Nowhere near as interesting. Let's see if I can't throw them in here to get moving on to the next challenge. And these I'm going to mush together in just a minute. So I'm just getting sort of some window color in, a little duller than those. The other thing is, this other one is closer to my center of interest. Now I'm getting away from it a little bit, and I'm going to just come in and it's my screen door window. And then this one over here, I'd like to make different than the other ones too. I like to make all the windows different. And this one is a little more interesting because I've got the plan out in front that I didn't put in earlier, and I meant to, I just forgot. So I'm going to paint this a little darker over in the windows here, and drop some color in there in just a second. So when I paint like this, I've got quite a bit of water on my brush, so I'm actually wetting all of these areas as I go along. So I'll just get a little more lively color in here, and I'm going to connect a couple again. paint them quickly and hope that I make a few mistakes in there. Okay, I want to do this, the shadow one over here is, let me see if I can. That's, reflect some green in that. Probably would be a little bit of white showing somehow or other maybe in that. That's close enough. I want to do that plant that I missed. Pardon?
25,
25 before the roof falls in or what?
before the roof falls in. The cookies start to come out.
Uh-oh, the cookies. Jeez, I don't want to interrupt the cookies. Thank you, Pam. So this is some kind of a plant that's, I think this might have been in the thing. I'm not sure. It's got a couple of hanging down things. Probably should be a little brighter than that, but that's okay. It's close enough. I was going to have some. I haven't used any of my Red Hot Mama yet. It's just it's very much like Cad Red. When you see colors like this that are transparent, I can't figure out when anyone would want to use Cad Red. I mean, that's pretty bright. Red Hot Mama. Cheap Joe was, I don't know him at all, but he must have a great time naming his paints. Now, this is an area that I made a mistake on in the I'll show you this. This shrub here I made too big. There's a ramp coming up that connects to the dock, and I lost my connection to that, so it's a bad technical error there that shows that this thing kind of disappears behind that shrub. So that's one of the corrections I made. So I'm going to paint this one smaller on this one. So I'm going to purposely show the connection of the dock to the ramp. I really want to see that. So here's a good use for the side of the brush. Lots of nice bright color. This can be lighter than the background, hopefully, because it should be in bright sunlight. And I was gonna, and I don't know if I'll bother with this now, I was gonna paint the, if you really do this, I think one of the interesting things you can do is, I mean, if you're really painting it carefully, is make the edge of the dock boards look pretty interesting. By up and down and, you know, so they're not all, you hired the town drunk, basically, to build your, build your ramp. You know, you don't want the best carpenter. I mean, so this is a painting.
Is there an opening for that job?
Geez, I hope so.
Would you attack this painting differently if you were painting it on location?
Well, you saw my location painting, so I would say yes. First of all, I paint vertical on location, by the way. So I'm painting standing up. I use a French easel, and I paint about, I don't know, 70 or 80 degree angle. So it's much harder to paint with water, vertical, because it really runs. But I have painted with wet, totally wet paper sometimes outside, because I like to have it running all over the place. But a lot of times, when it's very hot and dry out, it's really hard to do that because the paper dries super fast. But a lot of what I'm painting here, that's actually brown, is not, this isn't much different. I've changed my color scheme on the front. This is probably closer to the color that's there. When I'm painting out on location, I'm trying to get closer to probably what's actually there than I do. When I paint this way, I'm making up everything as I go along. So that's one big difference that I do. I have some people that like my plein air paintings better than my studio paintings because they like the spontaneity of the plein air. I thought that was kind of an interesting comment. So I had a fellow that was interested in buying one of my paintings, and I personally thought the studio painting I did was really nice, and he bought the plein air painting. Hey, he was a customer with money, what did I care, right? I'm like all the rest of you, right? Geez, you get somebody that comes along and wants to buy one, says, well. But I have to say, a funny story. I don't know why. I think of this crazy stuff. I put that red on it, made me think of it. I think every time I put red on a piece of painting like that, I think about this. There were 4 of us at a watercolor show hold it for just a second here. I really didn't want all hard edges on that. I hope that works. And so 4 of us that had watercolor, it was at a local community college, and so we had a reception, and the president of the college was there. He's one of these guys that's about 6'8", I don't know, enormous, 300-pound guy, and he had this laugh that you could hear from miles away. So he comes up to me and he says, we were in a meeting in this room. I sat in the back with the vice president. This couldn't have been a very exciting meeting, because he said that we were in this debate about what the red was. I had this red up in the sky. What that red was up in the sky, and the two of them were talking back and forth. So he told me that he would ask he told the vice president, he'd ask me, because he knew he'd seen me at the reception. So he asked me what it was, and I said, I just felt I needed a piece of red up in the sky. It's just a blob, just a brush stroke. He doubled over laughing, and this is a huge reception. You should have heard this guy. And then he told me all the stuff that they thought it was, and he had all these great things. He said, I like your ideas better. Next time someone asks me, I'm going to tell them that's what it was. So it was really, really kind of funny, because this is pretty colorful down through here, and just the way I like it. I'm just going to soften this edge for a minute. I'm not quite ready to go there. Okay, this kind of ran all over the place on me. I think it's all right. I'm not sure it's green anymore, but that's close enough. It's actually wet around me still, where I laid that heavy paint on, so I can't go in there. But I would like to get back to the dock. So let me just. This looks too funny for me looking at it this way. I wanted to paint kind of around.
What did you mean earlier when you said you like to save your edges?
And the paper's wet. I like soft edges. You know the difference between soft edge and hard edge, right?
Right.
I like a lot of soft edges in the painting. And if the paper's wet and it stays wet for a long time, I have much greater control over the edges. And what happens is that they reach a point when, like I've lost some edges here, like this is, I shouldn't have things like that. And I kind of like this up here where the roof is lost edge. So things that I like, and particularly where that's happening, on the edge of the painting. And the wetter the paper is, the more control you have over that. So once the paper starts to dry, you lose that. So sometimes if I'm painting in my studio at home and I lose the moisture content, I stop painting and I re-wet the entire thing again.
On the back or the front?
You can, generally speaking, I wet both. You can wet the front where you've painted, as long as you don't rub it. But normally I would just wet the part. Like say this, I want to just wet down here. I just take my big brush and I'd be sure the back was wet. The back is starting to dry now, but it's still damp. And I just wet this, and I'd keep right on going. So let me try to get this.
Why do you wet the back?
I just wet the back to try to help the moisture stay in the paper longer. And when the whole paper is wet, then it expands evenly and it shrinks evenly and it stays wet really a long time. I just think it's a great way to paint. And there's some paintings I've got up here you can look and tell that they are. I painted them all wet, and I never put a single stroke on them when they were dry. I think you can look and tell. There's a couple of them that I put. There's a good bleed there, so that one I like too. This one right here. If you paint dry, you don't get any of those, by the way. That's why I like to do it. I kind of like bleeds, as I say, because they scream watercolor at you. This is just the side of the dock. It's nothing. No big deal. Side of the dock in sunlight, hopefully. Let me finish this other one. How am I doing, Pam? What on time here?
About 10 minutes.
I wanted to paint a couple of poles for you, so I hope I can. I hope it's dry enough that I can do that. I'm going to paint the ramp itself is can be quite light. It's in full sunlight. It should get darker as it comes towards me. So I'll just strengthen the color a little bit. And I like to put sky colors in these up planes. Where I had my some cobalt blue in the deck. Gotta switch brushes here for a minute. That's I put a little of my red in the I'll make it a patriotic deck again. And I like to leave some white in it too. Now here's a puddle of water here. And it gives me a great opportunity to drag that into my dock, my ramp. If I'm painting at home, I'm watching these a little closer, and maybe this one picks them up. But I like the opportunity to drag these in like that, because it helps connect at least for me, it helps connect the dock to the background here. So it's not all hard edged. I guess that's what someone's asking me about the edges before, about the water. That's why I like the strong water content. That looks okay. I'll put some dark lines in that. And I also like to put them in now too, generally, while it's wet, so you can come in and this will bleed a little bit too. And so I kind of like the look of that. But again, if you don't like the look of the bleed, just wait till this dries, that's all. This just happens to be a quirk of mine, that's all. I like the soft, I definitely like soft edge paintings. I think I have a preference to them. So the back side of the, you know what I want to do? Oh well. This is the back side of the dock ramp. And I had some, I'm going to bring some grass up on this. That's definitely brown. So even though I don't paint with brown, it's easy enough to get brown. I think that looks okay. Okay, I didn't get to any of my foreground grasses. I would do the grasses and the boat at the same time, by the way. So that the grasses and the boats, again, this isn't my center of interest, this is. So I got hard edges up here, I can have soft edges down here. So this would be a pretty good application for a light. I'll do a little of that to show you how it goes. It'd be a good application for painting wet. So let me just... get the mud off of my palette here. I think I can leave this boat white.
Is that water down there?
No, it's all grass. I'll show you in a second. These are boats laying on the ground. If you look at some of those photographs I had of the things, there's all kinds of boats laying around this place. Just laying in, some of them are right side up, some are upside down. So now what I do is, the back of the boat is in shadow. So now I would come in and I'm going to paint grass while it's wet. This could be nice, bright, light grass. Paint it right up into the boat, and I'm gonna pop this one out down here. Should have more yellow in that. I told Pam I'll have to show you all something in a minute because it was. I did this plein air demo a couple of weeks ago. It was at the local library, and there wasn't a lot of great subject material, so I painted an alley. I must admit, I made it a nice looking alley. It really was not particularly good, but I paint with this. This is my plein air water bucket, which I hang on my French easel. I don't paint with a big one like that. This guy in the front row was he was kind of antsy because my water bucket was dirty. So he didn't quite know what to do, and he was really upset that I was painting with this dirty water. So he finally gets the courage up. He's an old guy, an elderly guy. Anybody that's older than me is elderly, by the way. So he was elderly, and he finally says, "Are you going to clean your water?" And I said to him, "What's the matter with my water?" And he said, "It's all dirty." And I says, "Well, it's dirty to I don't want to drink it, but for painting, it's clean water." So he didn't believe me, by the way. You may not either, but I'm gonna prove to you that in fact it is. So anyway, I would generally do this all at one time, and I would keep just going, putting grasses in and change the color. I was going to put some up on the dock too.
7 minutes.
Okay.
About
And I-
7 minutes.
And yeah, thanks. I would finish this at
Yeah, that's right.
all at one time, by the way. Whoop. Didn't mean to quite drop it like that, but in other words, I would keep going with this yellow, green, orange. Doesn't really matter what the color. I just want it to be bright and vibrant as compared to that back there. That was pretty blue back there. And I don't want as much blue up here. I'm going to have some, and I'm going to paint up on the front of this boat too. So those boats can be lost in the weeds, which would probably be typical of what they look like out there. Got some kind of a dark there. That's okay. A little more orange, a little purple maybe in here. Ooh, look at that purple, boy, isn't that nice? So it's really running down, and that's somewhat out of control. The magic of watercolor. So if you paint a lot of water, like I tend to, you get lots of crazy things that happen. Anyway, I would keep going with that, but since I won't right now, I'm going to soften these edges so that when I come back, I can overlap them without having a hard edge. This is really important. If you want to stop, soften the edge, and I can come back over that, and you will not know that I stopped there. If you don't do that, you have a hard edge there, and I don't want a hard edge there. I want this all to be soft edge, and oh, I forgot, I wasn't watching my drawing here close enough. I just realized I missed this part of the boat. Something like that. I think that's okay.
If you go back to do details later, are you going to wet, like behind, the man there, are you gonna wet it again, or?
Oh, I'm not gonna go back.
Oh, you're gonna leave it, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying not to go back anywhere, by the way.
All right.
If I have to go back, I will. The only place that I would go back on this painting, and I'll just show you a little bit. I would do 5 minutes of maybe total, but this maybe a minute on. That's still a little damp there. I may put a couple of shingles in. Actually, it's still wet. I don't know if you saw the bleed there. So I put a few things like that in, and I change color. So this is about as extensive as I get on going back in. I'm going to resist going back. I'll tell you why. There's a saying I've developed. I don't think I originated it, but you ready? All paying attention?
Yeah.
It's going to take me a minute to think of this.
They need a headline.
This is a headline. Okay, clean and correct is the goal in watercolor. Clean and incorrect is better than overworked and correct. Got that?
It's taking.
In other words, if you have a mistake in it, if it's clean, leave the mistake. It's not worth fixing. Because you might say that, well, this is a mistake here. This might be. And that I might fix because it's at the edge of the paper and I don't like it. So I would lift that with a sponge, an artist sponge. I'd lift that hard edge out, let it dry, and I would go back over that to get rid of that one. But these bleeds down here, I'm going to leave because they don't really bother me too much. Now, I wish my dark shadow was a little darker, as a matter of fact, but I don't think I'll go back over it. Again, it's clean, might be incorrect, but I like it.
Shadow on the building.
Yeah. Up in here, it looks like to me it's drying a little light, but anyway, I'm gonna do the posts because I just want to. I forgot one thing here, by the way. I've got a. I don't know if I can get this or not, but this is my arm here, and I've got my arm up on top of the boat.
Now it's perfect.
I was going to say, I'm painting a portrait here of Mel Stabin on the side of the boat. And then I realized that the boat's upside down. When I turn the boat upside down, his head's going to be bobbing up and down in the water. Okay, so the way I would paint the posts, every post that I paint in the important areas is going to be a different color. And I love to paint posts, just about like windows, by the way. Same idea. So you can wet the whole post. So I can put some. Oh, I want to show you the water. This is the proof. How's that look? I'm not going to convince you. That's clean water, right? Can we take bets? No, this is my worn out brush. Here we go. How's that? I want to put yellow. Want to put yellow in? There's a device in the bottom that cleans the water. No. I think, I'm not sure about this, by the way, but I've never had dirty water. It looks dirty. It's never dirty, even in a little bucket like that. And I think look at how yellow it is. You wouldn't know that that's not contaminated. I think it's because I'm using transparent colors. Maybe you know. That's my theory about it.
It's a good theory.
I think if you use opaques, your water tends to get a lot, particularly cad yellow, I think, is the kiss of death for water. But if you use transparents, I've never had, even though that water looks disgusting, it's not good. See, this is clean water I'm putting on this post here. You can tell there's no color going on there at all.
Not to put you under pressure, but about a minute to go.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna make it, but that's okay. You'll get. Well, look at that blossom there. That's. I probably would leave that also, by the way. So I'm just going to put a post in here, and I'm going to hope that the water I put on will bleed around to the other side. Oh, that's a pretty nice post. And I might even go with a touch of red. Let it run down. I'm going to do the one down below. Should be dark right up underneath there. Right here, this part's dark. And then it goes lighter, and I can put almost any color I want there. This post continues all the way through. It didn't. That's right, I painted the water through here. Now I forgot, I wasn't going to do that. I wouldn't do that at home if I was painting my studio, but...
Is that whole post or is it partly reflection?
That's actually all post. And this is a rock down here. These are rocks, and I've got grass coming up around the rocks, and I'm going to paint the rocks the same way I painted the boat. I'm going to paint the grass and the rocks at the same time, so they sort of blend in a little bit. So I'll do the ones in the back. Those I think I'm okay back there. Those are dark, so those are the ones where I painted the water through, and I normally would not do that. So, and I got to be tricky or careful here. Excuse me, because I don't want this to be the darkest dark on my painting either.
Hey, Tom?
Yeah.
If you like, you can continue, and we're going to turn our lights on. And,
Oh, I'll do that. Sure.
If you guys want something to eat, I'm sure there are.
And if anybody has any questions,
Thank you very much.
come on up. It's not done. Let's see what it looks like with a mat. Does the mat show up on the screen? And by the way, I can't resist. I've got a great idea for the next painting. I don't know if you've painted vignettes.
Yes.
I love to paint vignettes. This would make a terrific vignette. I've already got it figured out.
Stop it there.
No, I don't, because I went off over here. I'd leave the corner white,
Yeah.
and this is already white, and this one already is not bad. I'd have to work my corners a bit, and I'd leave some other whites in it, and I'd leave the ramp white. And it just came to me that would be great.
Put it on Photoshop.
Oh, no, it's too much fun painting, and I don't, Photoshop, God, I would hate to do that.
So you don't have to feel obsessed. I just didn't want you to feel cut off.
Well, I had a feeling I was in trouble. This
We
was,
started late.
yeah, it was a little too complicated a subject to try to finish it.
We've been saying that if Tom has things to sell.
So, don't forget to sign up for the raffle, where you get to pick a couple of from a couple of choices.
Right there.
And Tom has actually some things for sale if you're interested
Oh, I know,
in acquiring
yeah.
it.
It's much more vibrant looking at it, isn't it?
Yes, it's on.
No, I know it is. I can tell by looking at it. You can't see any.
washed out.
You can't see any more oranges up in that.
You can't see the color.
Much better than your paintings.
Yeah, because the paper expands when you wet it.
I see.
So if you tape it down and you wet it like I do, it bubbles.
That's fabulous. I never heard of that one. Wet in the back.
See, this is pretty wet. If you feel it right now, you can see the water on
I
it.
see it, right.
So the plexiglass helps hold it in.
Plexiglass.
So
Where'd
it's
you get the rest of
well, you get it at a glass store. Just tell, if you get it, just tell, it's expensive, just tell, I make it a ½ inch bigger, or 1 inch bigger all the way, so it's a ½ inch, should be a ½ inch mortar. My paper's expanded a little bit already. And then tell it
You
around the
realize
edges
how much
for you.
color that was in there.
Yes, sand them so they don't scratch your fingers.
Gorgeous.
I got rounded corners around edges. Yeah, so this, my board here, this should be 22 by 30. So I get this 23 by 31. I didn't wet the front of this one, but I would on a lot of things I do. I like to wet the front and the back. But what I wouldn't wet, maybe, let's say if I was going to wet the whole thing, I might not wet the building in this.
Just the background.
I might wet all the background, I might wet all of this. The whole back, and then this part in the front, and not wet this time.
Usually at a show, very.
And it's been an hour and a half. If you wet the whole paper, it takes hours to dry.
Misty.
This one, yes.
Thank you, we enjoyed this.
Oh, glad.
Yeah, make it misty. Misty. How do you make it misty?
Misty is pretty easy. Well, you have to,
Oh, it's even more delicious up here, isn't it?
yeah, the colors are kind of muted on the screen, aren't they?
Was this fun?
Of course, it's wet. I love wet. Oh, you're still painting. Do you want some coffee or something?
Oh, no,
Do you want me to get you something?
No, thanks. I've got water. I'm not old enough to drink coffee. I always say, I'll drink coffee when I get older.
Is that pink, purple, red hot mama? Or is that a combination?
That's,
I'm on.
this
Hey,
color is
Chris, how you
Janice
doing?
Rose Violet.
I'm great.
But it mixes pretty nice with,
Other, yes, it
but
does.
Did you see the powder?
no, I do
I know,
use it.
but you know, like.
That's my phthalo green
show
slot
that
right there.
No, the colors are not as vivid there as they are here. This is,
Yellow and blue.
Yellow and blue.
his stuff is incredible.
Because I was amazed how different you got so many different colors.
Well, if you, I've got 3 yellows, and I've got, I didn't use cerulean, so I have 3 blues. And with 3 yellows and 3 blues, you can get some thousands of blues.
And the yellows are the ones you told me from.
Yeah, and you can mix the
Those
yellows.
yellows.
You can mix the yellows, by the way. There's a yellow, there's a yellow, there's a yellow, and it's still going to be perfectly clean because they're just yellows. Now I can mix 3 blues if you want to. There's a blue. And these are going to be perfectly clean greens.
And you mix your greens.
So if you do that, and then every time I come back, okay, let's say I painted a little bit with this one. Okay, that's enough of that. So now, if you come back and pick up yellow and add yellow to this mixture, I have a different green. Then I come back and I can add a different yellow, right to the same
I'm
mixture.
afraid to use that much color like on that post there. Is that Halloween orange you got there? Or on
Yeah.
that post?
Which post?
The one on, right up on the top there. That color. What's that color? It's so bright.
That one? Does have a little...
I'd be afraid to paint it that bright. You know?
Why?
You know, I'm not sure what that is. I think it might be Halloween orange and red.
A little red.
But I'm not sure.
All right.
Yeah, this one is pretty dull over here now. So what you can do, it's still wet. This is Red Hot Mama. So you can,
You ever use black? Well, that's
Make your
crazy.
own.
Never.
I don't even use. You don't see any black.
No, I didn't see
The
it.
closest you come to black is that night seam there.
Right.
Underneath the dock.
And what did you use for that?
Well, I used the phthalo green, which I don't happen to have, but you can get very black with.
Yeah.
It's not perfectly black, but it's pretty close.
Nice.
Now, if you have phthalo green with that, it really goes to black.
And it will.
I don't have any phthalo green. I have two dark blues and glycerin.
Okay.
Either one of the dark blues work together. Okay, we had a request for a mist.
Mist.
The secret mist. A mist.
Mist.
The secret to mist is its absence of color. So in order for it to show up, you need color on either side. So I wet the paper. Okay, so let's say that I've got some, mixed up some greens here, so it doesn't really matter. So let's say I'm going to put some trees into this. And I kind of stay with it. I sort of watch it. You can change the color if you want to. You can do any color you want. That's not a very good mist color. Okay, then what I would do is, it's starting to bleed on me now, so I'm going to go through with a clean brush, no paint on it, and I'm just going to clean up these edges.
Do you use mostly muted colors for that?
Mostly what?
Like not real strong?
Yeah, probably if you're making a mist. And that's a pretty good mist right there. And I might leave it like that. Now the other thing you can do is if you get paint on this is a pretty good one I've got started here. Come back and just lift the color up. Lift the color up because it's wet. And I'm not going to get any blossoms on this, I don't think, unless I really screw it up.
That's good.
And then in order to get the bottom half of this, if you want a little color in there, you can. You got to come back with dark on the bottom now to make this believable. I shouldn't use that color. I don't have that color in my painting, so I shouldn't use that. So. And how about a tree that goes up between them?
It makes his trees, it makes it look so easy.
So you get mist.
That's great.
You can clean this up too if you want. Just wow. With a clean brush.
Yeah, it really looks good, doesn't it? You know, can I feel this paper to see how it is? Oh, it's really.
It's still damp now, yeah, because it's
Still damp.
the plexiglass holds the water.
It's like plexiglass.